Hi, welcome to my first video. Today I'm going to be talking you through a preview for Giro dell'Emilia, and as it's my first video, sort of explaining a bit about what I've done in the sport as a sort of a trader of cycling and how I've made profit, and then also my experience with bookies and how I've been banned. So first one I got banned from this year. I've previously been banned from Betway, so I can hardly place any bets on there anymore. Sky Bet have limited me to 10% of the maximum that most people are allowed to bet on a standard unregulated account. Pretty modest profits there. Generally working around 15% and around £2,000 profit. Bet365 were sort of a hammer blow to me. This is probably the biggest bookmaker for cycling, and they just banned me last month. I was generally working around a 25% profit margin on bets there. They're very closely linked with Betway. Pretty much all the odds are the same there, and they have similar amounts of in play. I'm pretty limited on what I can actually bet on now and money I can get there. So my hope is to hopefully transfer some knowledge online into a wider community, which might be used to other people because currently I can't really get much money on cycling bets. So I'm also going to run through the process I go through when analysing a race, and then we'll sort of do it on the Giro dell'Emilia, which is a big race coming up tomorrow in the World Tour. So I'll start with route analysis, then previous results. So for Giro Emilia, very similar route previous few years, so the results and what happened in that race are very valid. Then we'll look at the odds on various platforms, ensure we get the best odds, and then analyse team composition, so who the leader might be. Might also look at the social media and the websites of each World Tour team to see who's leader, because you don't want to be betting on a guy who's just going to be domestiquing. Then after that, we'll do full reflections and other considerations, what's happening in the wider cycling landscape and with those riders at the moment. And when I say that, it could be like rider contracts, team mergers, quite an important one at the moment, and even stuff like riders' wives getting pregnant and stuff like that can affect it. Birthdays, if it's a rider's birthday, generally there's usually quite a higher chance of success and performance as well, which is really weird, but it definitely is a big correlate. After that, we decide what to bet on, and in this case, it'll be me giving recommendations to you. So looking at Giro dell'Emilia route, slightly changed up every year, but always sort of finishing on a similar circuit made up of kind of dominated by a climb of 2.1 kilometers at 9.4%, quite irregular as well. Sort of analysed it in more detail on Velo Viewer, and you'll see it's fairly irregular with a lot of really steep gradients. But to keep this video fairly short, you can sort of see the profile there, a lot of climbing, and as you can tell, it's probably going to be a very climber heavy race. So the guys we're going to bet on are obviously going to be good climbers. Looking back at previous results, so 2022 race won by Enric Mas, who was coming off great form at the Vuelta when he came second to Evenepoel. Second Pogacar, who was I think he takes a break after the Tour in his sort of classic sort of season he's done for himself, and then sort of does this race warming up for Lombardia, which his form was still building. He lost it out here to Mas last year, but then went on to win against him in Lombardia. And looking down, I think you can see this race is very selective. Everyone coming in ones, like not even ones and twos, just everyone on their own. And I think you can sort of see by top 18, it's pretty much the strongest climbers in order is kind of how this race goes, just due to the brutality of said course. 2021, similar story again. We see Roglic win after he'd come off a win at the Vuelta, so similar position to Mas, both coming off Vuelta in great form with a great result there and taking the win. And similar story again. You can sort of see just top climbers in the top 10. I think here you can pretty much pick out the top 10 climbers, and they're all in the top 10 if you looked at the start list at the start of the day. So, yeah. 2020, again, similar story. This race was run sort of, it was a very mixed up season due to COVID. So, this isn't like post Welter or anything. And again, yeah, very Italian centered top 18. You can see most people are just Italians in the top 18. And yet we saw Alexander Vlasov take a win. And again, as you can kind of see, the top 10 is pretty much just the 10 strongest climbers who are in the race that day. So looking at the Sky Bet odds, we see the promotion is Roglic at 4-1, and then all the other odds on Sky Bet they're offering race winner to finish top 3 and also to finish top 10. And given the way, I think that this race is pretty much orders riders in terms of climbing ability really well. I think the top 10 book is quite interesting, especially I think it's quite good odds for a lot of those displayed on the screen to finish top 10, to be honest, because I feel the level does drop off, and the guys sort of displayed on the screen here are quite high level, quite a long way ahead of a lot of the other guys further down the field. So yeah, looking on Bet365, pretty similar odds again. Only big deviation is Carlos Rodriguez. He's a lot shorter on Sky Bet, less than 20-1, I think it was. But here out at 40-1. Quite surprised at this. Doesn't make too much sense to me. So maybe Carlos Rodriguez here is a good bet, although I think he once was around 12-1 on Bet365 as well. So potentially they've got some sort of information that he's not feeling well, or that he'll be working for Sivakov in this race. Bit of a dangerous one, that one. But 40-1 does look pretty good for Carlos Rodriguez right now. So yeah. Looking at this as well, so after I've sort of looked at the odds, I'll then sort of look at the teams we have, go through all the teams whilst also kind of looking at the odds. Yeah, apologies, this is a bit small. I think, yeah, obviously I've maybe got some work to do still on making a nice video. The UAE team looks incredibly strong. I think all their riders could top 10. Pogacar, sort of naturally you could call out as the leader, but Adam Yates has been performing extremely well, did really well in Canada. Ayuso, I mean, he sort of faded at the Vuelta towards the end, but still pretty solid in this race. I don't see him winning. He never really showed that level at the Vuelta, like to beat Roglic, Yates and Pogacar. I don't see him being the strongest in this race. This is going well. Grosjean has had a great year. Micah also very strong in Canada, doing massive pulls, not going for his own results. Javine, a bit of an unknown. So yeah, but could go very well. UAE, mega team. Pogacar, potentially probably the leader. That's what the bookies are guessing. But I think Adam Yates looks incredibly strong and could win this race on his own. Not so much Ayuso, and I think everyone else will likely fall into domestique roles. Don't know how UAE will play this, but I think we'll talk about that later as well. Bora Hansgrohe here. Yeah, pretty strong team. Kamner and Vlasov could be top 10. Other than that, I'm not seeing much. A lot of their stars that were brought from the Vuelta, so they'll all be on decent form. But I mean, were any of these guys great climbers in the Vuelta? Can they challenge for the podium? I'd say probably not, but maybe, Kamner and Vlasov, yeah, top 10 seems realistic. Higuita's had a bad season. Could he pull it out here? I'm not sure. He looked poor towards the end of the Vuelta also, and that's kind of reflecting the odds. Mass, yeah, obviously he's performed well here in the past. Not as great of Vuelta this year. I think a long way behind Roglic. I didn't really see how Mas could beat Roglic here unless Roglic has gone off a cliff. They also bring Jorgensen, who's pretty solid. But other than that, no one I think you could challenge on this parkour. Jorgensen, I think he's winding down his season now, getting ready for next year. He did okay in recent races, but yeah, not fantastic. And I think top 10 for him is pretty ambitious. But Mass, someone who should top 10, but probably not podium, is probably where I'd put him. pretty solidly. AG2R, Bring, Ben O'Connor and Felix Gal both have questionable form. Outsiders for the top 10, which is again sort of where the bookies have them. Ayo Kometa don't really have anyone. They've not even confirmed their team yet. Israel Premier Tech maybe in previous years, Fulsang, Woods, or Potts of Evo, even Schultz and Tuns. I mean, this is a very strong team from them. I expect one of them to maybe get involved in the top 10. I don't see anyone podiuming from this team, but overall, this is just an incredibly strong team. I'm not quite sure who the leader would be. I don't think it matters. I think all of them will just be hanging on as long as they can. But yeah, I think there's quite a lot of them there who actually have a decent shot of a top 10. Stephen Williams been on an incredible form recently, winning in Norway, and also being very impressive in the final stage of Tour of Britain. Again, looking forward, little trek. Chicone, I think the bookies have pretty high up. I'm not convinced. Not looked unbelievable at the end of this year. He's Italian. Italians generally go well in these late Italian races, but I think podium's ambitious. I'm not even that convinced of a top 10 either, although might regret saying that. But yeah, EF Education, Iran's performed here well. Chavez has performed here well. Carapaz has shown good flashes so far this month. Again, a bunch. Chavez and Iran chance for top 10, and Carapaz as well really struggle to see a podium for that team. Alpecin, I think anyone top 10 in there is ambitious. Intermarché yet to confirm their team. And Quick Step with some outsiders for the top 10 in Van Wilder. Van Wilder being their best shot of achieving that podium for anyone there. Very, very, very ambitious, and I just don't see it happening, to be honest. And yeah, further down we go. DSM. Bardet, not a bad shout. To be honest, I think his odds are pretty good as well. Not for a win. I think you're looking at him as a potential top 10er, if anything. And yeah, they didn't really have a team to influence the race. FDJ, I mean, Pinot can be solid. Gregoire and Martinez, I think, will be very tired from the Vuelta, to be honest. Cofidis, Martin, his odds were very good for a top 10, I think at about 4-1. Lefebvre's performed well this week as well, but again, I think this race is too hard for Lefebvre. He normally only can survive about one climb. But yeah. And finally, last slide here, two solid teams in Jumbo-Visma and Ineos. You got Sivakov's been on electric form, looking very good. Rodriguez been on electric form, looking very good. Rodriguez 40-1. I don't like him to win. As a podium, it's not a terrible shout, but the way they've moved his odds so dramatically makes me think they know something. Sivakov, I really like for a top 10. He's performed so solidly the last month, and I think he'll be the leader here. They've also got Aronsman at quite long. He sort of crashed quite dramatically out the Vuelta. What shape he's in now, kind of an unknown. He might go really well, but the odds are saying he won't. I'm also inclined to say he won't. He wasn't even going that well at the Vuelta, so I'm not convinced it will have come good for him in the meantime. Simon Yates looked okay recently, but again, I don't see it. I see like a top 10, potentially not a podium. And Jumbo have, for me, I'm going to go against the bookies here. I really like Roglic to win the race. We've seen in previous editions that people coming off a strong Vuelta have won. Roglic, for me, had a very strong Vuelta, and he looked fantastic on the Angler route. I think, yes, Jonas was probably the stronger rider, but given how Roglic's season has gone, he sort of hadn't raced for a long time before the Vuelta, which makes me think he'll be able to carry his form into this Italian season quite well. Roglic also, of course, looking quite like he's moving teams right now, probably amid contract negotiations. Makes him also want to perform well here, so he won't have taken that big break after the Vuelta. But then on the flip side, the stress of likely moving teams and maybe some internal conflict in Jumbo-Visma that might be the reason he wants to leave his contract early, might be causing him some stress. But for me, I expect Roglic to be at the highest level we've seen Primoz Roglic this year. And yeah, I think the 4-1 offer on Sky Bet is pretty good value. So yeah, key takeaways: this race generally one where the strongest rider wins. UAE an incredibly strong team, I think mainly headlined by Adam Yates and Pogacar. Pogacar, I think this could be one of the lowest points in a season form-wise. He obviously is the best climber in this race, but at this moment, I don't think his form is very good. We've seen that in previous Italian races this month. I think he has still got a decent chance of Lombardia. I know it's only a week away, but the extra distance really suits him. And in previous years, I think in 2021, when he won, he was quite poor in these races as well when he was beaten, but then went on to win Lombardia. So I mean, you can forecast the same thing to happen twice, and that's what I think will happen. I think we'll see a better Pogacar in Lombardia, but not his best here. I still don't think it's terrible to see him as favourite, and he's kind of around that 2-1 sort of ratio. Yeah, he can win, but yeah, going back to the UAE sort of dynamic, the way I'd play it if I was them, I'd be firing off a lot of attacks because I think there's only a few people who can cover attacks off a lot of their eyes. Like I'd be firing Ayuso early, I'd be firing Micah early, and making Roglic and like Sivakov work really hard to bring those riders back, and then an all that attack from like Yates or Pogacar once they're tired, or just having the ability to not have to respond and accelerate like they would when it's their teammates going up the road. I don't think they'll race like this. I personally think they've raced a long way from game theory optimal all year. And so, yeah, I think what they'll do is I think they'll just make it as hard a race as they possibly can, maybe not attack as much as they should, and just expect Yates or Pogacar to win on the final climb. I think there's a good chance, yes, that one of those two might win, but I personally prefer a lot of attacking from this team. But I think they'll sort of ride it like a train, which I don't think is right because I think there's quite a good chance Roglic will be the strongest rider in this race. So yeah, going back onto that, yeah, Roglic he's in quite a key point of his career now. Probably going to sign the most important contract for him. You know, he's 33. If he wants to win the Tour, he'll probably want big money, but he also want to go to a team which can deliver that because he's not going to have leadership at Jumbo. Vingegaard's just way better. So yeah, I think he wants to perform here to really show his worth, which is maybe something he wasn't able to do at the Vuelta when working for Kuss. And yeah, this is definitely something to think about. There's a lot going on for Roglic right now, but I also think his form should be good. Adam Yates, for me, for people who really want to really back Pogacar, I'd say don't get carried away with it. Yes, if you think he's going to win, I don't think 2-1's not terrible, but it's not great. It's not fantastic in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Yates is the strongest UAE rider here. He really did look fantastic in Canada, and I think he could go very well here as well. But we'll see. So who to bet on? What's my tip? So yeah, looking through it all, analysing it all, I think it's hard to not say UAE will win, but that's essentially what I'm going to say. I think it is quite likely Yates or Pogacar will win, but I don't like their odds. It's just I don't know who they're going for out of the two of them. And personally, the way I read it, I expect Roglic to be the strongest rider in this race. I think at 4-1, Roglic is the best value who to bet on. So yeah, I think that's who I'd bet on. I think 4-1 is actually pretty good odds for Roglic in the race. If I was setting odds, I'd probably have him more down to around 2-1, to be honest, and maybe Pogacar out to like 3-1 is how I'd be pricing it. So when I say 4-1's a good price, I'm saying there's more than 20% chance it'll happen. I'm not like saying this is definitely going to happen. This is guaranteed to happen. but it's a good price. I'd say it's a good investment. What I also really like is Roglic to podium. For him to not podium this race, I think he's got to be quite a long way off. Yes, Pogacar and Yates could both be on great form and don't need necessarily to sacrifice themselves to each other. A UAE 1-2 is not implausible. But after those two, I do sort of struggle to see a third name who can be stronger than Roglic. So he's either going to have to crash, tactically mess it up, or give up to not podium, in my opinion, because if he's anywhere near his Angliru form, which I see absolutely no reason for him not to be, he should be on that podium. So I really do like 11 to 10 for Roglic to podium. I think it should be a lot shorter to that, maybe more like 11 to 20. I think it's just great value here. I really like that bet. Sivakov as well. Obviously his training was based for him to go to the Welter and perform there, which he didn't get the chance to do. And yeah, his form has been fantastic. His form's been fantastic in Canada. It's been great in these Italian races, and we're only looking to top 10 with him here. And at 4 to 5, I think that's an absolutely fantastic price. Another book, Unibet, actually has him at 6 to 4 the podium. So yeah, and I think he will be leader here. Maybe Rodriguez is leader, but I don't think one of them will sacrifice themselves for the other. I think they're both sort of a hold on to UAE sort of type rider in this race. Another rider I like to top 10 is Mass, and like Sivakov, I'm struggling to see a podium here for him, but a top 10 I really like. I don't think there's 10 riders stronger in this race than Mass, and given he didn't finish the tour, sort of had his injury, and then went to the Vuelta, I think he'll have a lot of motivation and form to carry through these Italian races, and especially given his success in them last year as well. I think 8 to 11, fantastic price on Mass. Just to sum up, I'm pretty confident on Roglic to podium, Sivakov to top 10, Mass to top 10, and although I'm not confident on a Roglic win, I think 4 to 1 is a fantastic price. Until next time, thanks a lot for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think of this video.